So the guy, the preacher went over, he based the sermon off the aggregation of marginal gains, which actually goes back to some other things dating back quite a while. One of the first guys to ever win the chess said he was using this idea, the aggregation of marginal gains. He became the first world champion in chess. But the most common, most well-known example of this would be a coach for one of the largest sporting events in the world. You guys know what it is?
Soccer.
No.
Rugby?
Hockey. Super Bowl.
The Tour de France.
Oh.
It'll gather about 3.5 million people will line the road along the competition, and somewhere around 3-4 billion people will watch it at some point on television. And so the coach for Great Britain hadn't won the Tour de France in about 76 years. Ever since pretty much the start of it, they never won. They just kind of became complacent into what they were doing, and they accepted, well, this is the way it is, this is how we operate, and we're good with that. So he came in and he broke down everything that they do, everything from the way they wash their hands, the way they sleep, the way they ride their bike, how their seat was positioned, how much air pressure their tires had, everything. He broke it all down and he said, how can I make a 1% difference in everything that they do? So he started looking at that, and he told them, we're going to change 1% everything you do, your nutrition, everything. And in 5 years, we're going to win the Tour de France. And he was wrong. They ended up doing it in 3 years. So, and then since then, they won 6 out of the last 7 Tour de France's, and it's all been different riders. Never the same riders. It's not like they have one power horse. They had a team that all made a difference, one little bit at a time, that led to a huge amount of success. So I kind of drew a little chart here. It's 1 degree or 1% of difference. You have a starting point, and if you're going in the negative, it all seems about relatively the same, and then it becomes a major difference. The best way to look at that is if a plane or a boat is even 1 degree off in their trajectory, they're going to end up thousands of miles apart. So I wanted to kind of take that idea, the aggregation of marginal gains, share some, and see how we could apply that into the company and kind of what we've already been doing. We've kind of had some changes and some things go on, and we've been looking at it, and we've been breaking things down to our sales, what we're actually doing, how successful we're being. But I wanted to take a look at some of the things that we can do within that, not just, well, let's boost our numbers, or not so much what we want, but more of how we get there. And so I wanted to kind of get you guys thinking about things like that. One of the things that stood out when I was doing a little bit of research on this was the core. It was commitment and ownership and responsibility will equal excellence. So I like the idea of that a lot. Obviously you don't do something for 20, 30 years without being committed to it, but the ownership and the responsibility, I think, really stood out for our situation, and not just within us, but our painters and everything like that, is finding people with that kind of formula. The people that are going to be committed, people who are going to take ownership of their stuff, have some pride in it, and then be responsible for when they mess up or when they're successful or whatnot. And we hold that accountable, we hold that there, and obviously we're going to succeed excellence, which is what we try to do. But obviously we run into problems, and it's how we address that that's going to make the difference. But a lot of these things are things that I feel like we already do, but I really like the idea of just changing one little bit of it, and to see the difference it can make. So I wanted to get you guys thinking, maybe as we go on the next couple weeks, is looking at the things we do on a day-to-day, how we estimate, how we approach the customer, how we deal with our painters and whatnot, and realize that when we're dealing with ourselves, it's not just us. We're not just getting our painters to do it, getting our customers to like us. It's we gotta work together on it, and make those little bit of changes. Some of the ideas I did come up with, and you guys can kind of interject as you have some off your head, is training. Taking a little bit of time to make sure that our guys are trained properly, which we've already set up. You know, we're doing a thing on Friday, but beyond that, I forget who had the idea for it. I believe it was you, Pete, for the strainers and stuff like that. Like just training a guy on how to properly take care of his equipment. It's just a 1% difference in, hey, you know what to do, great, versus, hey, do you do this? Let me show you. It's a small change, a small difference, but you can make a huge difference in how much paint, how well your gun works, everything like that. It's a small change. Automate things. So, we kind of already started to work on that, like trying to adapt TiVo and different programs to work together, kind of eliminate that human error. Kind of went over that in a good to great, but that's some stuff like in payroll or trying to do pay apps, some way to automate it that makes your day a little quicker so you don't get caught up in the office as hard as much.
Right.
So,
And you know, another great point with automation we were looking at is trying to figure out a way to automate like work orders, like the work order system, right? Like, as opposed to having to have paper copies on hand that we hand people at every single job, and make sure that we're not depending on human error, or, you know, us as people to follow through on that and being imperfect human beings. Trying to figure out a way to automate that and make sure that we just send them out and they have them, whether it's by text or email or something. So yeah, I'm with you there, dude.
the other one I saw that was big was the key performance indicators. If we could figure out what those are, and for us specifically within the residential, the commercial, and the company as a whole, figure out what our key performance indicators are, and I'm pretty sure you have a good idea of what those already are. But kind of interject those into looking at those, breaking those individuals down. I kind of had some ideas of what our gross profit margins are, our cash flow, what our successful bids are versus our customers and whatnot, kind of things we've already talked about. Figuring those out and then looking at those individuals like the customer or the cash flow, and breaking those down, and seeing what a 1% difference we can make in those. You know, where's the differences we can make in these things? Like I said, the more of the, not what we're doing, but how we're doing it is, that's you.
So as far as a performance indicator, so say the customers, we've been bidding to Martin and Harris for a long period of time. They keep sending us invitations to bid. We've sent over proposals, don't get any work, versus Stark, where you got in the door, you send over a proposal, we get the job, or, you know, we wrestle with them a little bit, but at least we're getting work out of them and stuff like that. Paying attention and focusing on, well, I'm not going to bid for Martin and Harris anymore. Throw them out a invitation or a bid every once in a while, just to kind of keep them on the keep us on the bid list for something that may come up that's good, but not focusing so much time and attention on getting bids out to people that aren't going to give us any work.
Yeah, that's exactly one of the ways we did look at the customers. One of the things was also planning backwards. That coach, he took a look and he said, what does it take to win the Tour de France? You know, how fast do I need to go? And one of the other coaches, he sat there and he said, well, the guy who weighs less, has the best air tires, has the best traction on his tires, and is the most aerodynamic, is going to win. He said, so let's look at that. Let's get our guys to fit those qualifications. Let's fix their, you know, where they exercise their bodies. You know, and a lot of people focus on building lots of muscle to power forward, and he was like, well, muscle weighs you down, so how about we work on explosiveness, things like that. So they looked at what it takes to win the Tour de France, and they worked backwards from it. What is it going to take to get to $5.1 million, and work backwards from that? Like we said, well, we kind of looked at you know, we need to hit this 500,000 mark, but how can we subjugate that to kind of make it more manageable? And we looked at a week number. What do we need to hit in a week? What do we need to close in a week? What do we need to do to hit our numbers? Not just look at this number and go, all right, let's push to it, but let's work backwards from it and see how we can do it. And then the final idea that I kind of came across and I liked, and I feel like it would resonate well with you, Mike. Conduct the orchestra. And this is a large part of what you have to do, especially down here in Vegas now that Nathan has gone up to Utah to start this thing, is conducting the orchestra. That's the way this coach looked at what he was doing. And this, I know I'm focusing on this, the one coach, but I feel like it has a lot of applications into what we're doing here. He looked at conducting the orchestra as how he ran his thing. He said that he wasn't just coaching the players, he was coaching other coaches and other management staff. He wasn't just working with a group, he was getting all of these people, these harmonious parts to work together to achieve the goal, in which he wound up doing very well. And he said the way he did that is he stopped looking at the management as the most important pieces and the coaches as the most important pieces, and started looking at the riders. And he said that the riders are the most important pieces. And we were talking a little bit, we have good margins right now, but what are we doing? Is it too much money on the bids? Are we screwing over the workers? And I think our workers really are our riders. They're the ones that get out there and they're doing it. And so we need workers that have our core. We need to make sure that they feel like they're the priority and that they're the ones in the orchestra. They're the ones making it work, and they need to feel that we're conducting it properly. So I thought that was really good because you know, we sit here with the estimators and we put it together and we're like, well, you need to do this, and it's like, well, yes, but how do we make it so that they feel like they're the priority? You know, obviously the conductor, he understands if there's something wrong and he needs to stop whatever he's doing, and he'll point it out and he'll make them know, hey, what you're doing is wrong. But then at the end of the day, he also has to still get them to bring out the sound that he wants. So the last thing I kind of wanted to touch on was to go back to the core. He had the commitment to ownership, to respect equaled excellence. And when they had the big doping scandal and everything like that, one of the things that they came to him, because they continued to have success throughout that, and they had a completely clean crew, and everyone was like, well, let's lessen our restrictions on people who are caught doping, so that way they feel more willing to come forward. And he said, one of the quotes he had is, "We prefer to compromise our performance rather than change our policy." So he said, you know, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what they are gonna, like, them leaving, or, you know, we might lose this guy, but I'd rather compromise our performance than, you know, jeopardize what our standard is, what our policy is. And we've done that. You know, there's been people in here that have jeopardized our performance, and we've had to get rid of them because of our policy didn't work. And, you know, we've kind of felt like we felt this tinge of, you know, more responsibility and, you know, a little bit more stress, you know, not sure exactly how things are going to go, but when that happens, you see people step up, you see people come to the plate, like Carmen's come to the plate, and she's taking on a bigger role, and as the estimators, we have to take on a bigger role. So I think that quote really applied to our company and how we're running things, and I thought that was really good. And I feel like that kind of summed it up. We'd rather compromise. What did he say? We prefer to compromise our performance rather than our policy. So, and I think we may have seen a little bit of that. You know, we didn't hit our $5,000 or $5 million mark, but we weren't going to compromise our policy, you know, to keep on people who were, or compromise our performance to keep people who didn't fit our policy or fit our core. So,
I like it, man. It's good stuff.
Very good, John.
That was great.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, man. Good stuff.
Where's the donuts?
I know.
That's good.